Peace, and welcome back to Rooted in Muddy Waters. I am your host and community herbalist, Tomikaya Latoya, and welcome back. Um, where do we start? Let's see where I've been. I know, I know, I know. I know that I haven't been posting any episodes, I haven't been posting any content, I haven't been consistent with the podcast, and I have good reason. So I'm not going to apologize, but I will. We will dive into my reason behind it. Life has just been lifing, and I didn't realize that me taking on a podcast as well as having an actual physical location for my business was going to be a little bit too much for me. Um, Especially since when I started this podcast, the point of this podcast, right, is healing, growth, and enlightenment. All things healing, growth, and enlightenment. Not specifically dealing with herbs or physical wellness, but this also goes into spiritual and spiritual wellness, mental wellness, across the board, all wellness. Because let's be honest, it's levels to this, right? And um, I was putting a lot of pressure on myself to do this podcast a certain way. Oh, there has to be video. Oh, I have to do it. I have to release something this many times a week. I have to do it like this. I have to do it like that. And to be honest, I was doing too much. I was overextending myself. That on top of also creating content and doing all of the things when it comes around my business. And so I haven't released a podcast episode in over a year. But it is something that I still wanted to do. I still wanted to do the podcast episode. I still wanted to be able to share and to have difficult conversations with my community. Because that's what it's about. This is healing, growing, enlightenment for the community, for the collective. And I wanted to continue to have those conversations. And so I'm like, okay, Tomikaya, like, you want to do this thing, and you're telling yourself that you have to do it this way. You have to do it. You have to have video for every episode. You have to record this many times a week. You have to do this, do that. And it came to a point I was like, well, who said so? Who say who said I had to do it this way? In no other area of my life, when it comes to raising my children, when it comes to my marriage, when it comes to me being on my journey, I don't do it by anybody's blueprint. I don't do it by anybody else's checklist. I do everything in a way that fits me, my morals, my values, what I'm capable and able to do for myself. And so I was like, why the podcast should be no different. The podcast is just another extension of me and everything else that I'm doing. And so the podcast should be no difference. So why are you giving yourself such a hard time to accomplish this thing that you said you want to accomplish, but trying to put yourself in a box that you don't belong in? You don't fit inside boxes. You're not a square peg. Stop trying to fit yourself into it. And so I was like, self, you are right. And so that's what I want to talk about in this episode. Our welcome back episode. We're going to talk about like how it's okay to not fit into social norms. It's okay to be a person who thinks outside of the box, who lives life wholly outside of the box and being your authentic self, and no matter what that looks like for you. Because, everybody's journey is different. You may see people on social media and on YouTube and all the things and think that, oh, I'm supposed to do it this way. It needs to be this way. And on my journey, I have learned that that's not necessarily the case. Yes, there are certain things in life that you need to, follow a certain checklist to be able to get things completed. But when it comes to living and being your authentic self, there is no blueprint. There is no box to fit into. There is no checklist. And so again, this episode will be about stepping outside of the box and living wholly in that. Because no boxes are allowed. Okay? So we're going to go through some tips, and these tips are how to break out of societal norms and how to embrace yourself on this authentic path that we call life. Okay? And so the first one is going to be self-reflection. Me realizing what I had to realize when it came to this podcast, and the only reason why I was able to realize that is because I do tend to do a lot of self-reflection, just taking a step back, looking at the situation, looking at myself, and having an honest and open reflection to view things for what it is. And so that was the first step for me, as far as like, girl, like, why are you trying to put yourself in a box? Why are you trying to follow somebody else's blueprint, or saying that you have to do this way in order for it to be well received from the people that you want to receive it? And self-reflection was the thing that was the start of like, okay, I don't have to do it this way. I can do it my own way. And so self-reflection, again, is going to be the first step to living authentically, like being willing and being open and having an open dialogue with self when it comes to reflection, and to being authentically who you are. All right. The next one, define your own success. Now, there's a common phrase that success is relative. And I honestly think that is true. Success is relative because it depends on the individual and how they define success. So some people may look at me and may think that I'm not successful, or that I don't have a successful podcast, or that I don't have a successful business. And I would say to that, you don't know who I am. You don't know what my finish line is. For me, I'm already successful. I'm successful because I had the courage to start the podcast. I'm successful because within my business, I get to connect with so many different beautiful people. I'm successful because I am a mother and I have a family and I'm happy, and my children have a roof over their head and they're homeschooled and they get to be themselves and not be forced to live by anybody else's narrative or requirements. When it comes to society, they're just able to just live and be free children. So to me, I'm already successful. So now you have to ask yourself, you have to have a self-reflection on that question for yourself. It's like, what is success to you? What does that mean to you? And it does not necessarily have to be of monetary value. It doesn't have to be money. And if that is for you, that's okay. But be honest about that. To me, I'm already successful. For me, having a family that's happy and healthy, I've already won. What is success to you? Define that for yourself. Challenge assumptions. I tell this to my children all the time. Question everything. Question everything. Question everyone, even your parents. In a respectful way, of course. But question. Question things. Question things that people are saying that are normal. Question, why it's normal. Ask those questions. Why? Why do I have to do it this way? Who said I had to do it this way? Who set this standard? And then set your own standards. But most definitely question the assumptions and ask the questions why and why not? Why can't it be done this way? Why can't I have my own way of accomplishing this goal? Why? and why not? Embrace failure. Now, failure and setbacks can be a difficult thing to move through. But, no, not but, because this is not an either or, this is both. Failure and setbacks can be a difficult thing to flow through. And it can also be rewarding. There are going to be times where we fail at a task, just like I fail to be consistent at this podcast in the beginning. I failed to get this podcast off the ground the way that I wanted it to. So it was a setback. Not even really a failure, more so a setback. And I was disappointed in myself for that reason. But what did I learn from that? I learned that I was doing things or setting unrealistic expectations for myself around this podcast. I learned how I wanted to do the podcast and how I didn't want to do the podcast. So again, there was still growth. There was still knowledge that was given to me through that setback. So embrace your setbacks and be able to go back to that first one, self-reflection, to find out, okay, this was a failure. This was a setback. But what did I learn from this? And how can I move forward? Continuous learning. Now, this is my favorite tip. And it's my favorite because in me being a herbalist, I tell everybody that yes, I'm a teacher, but I'm forever a student. And I think that we should all have that outlook on life. Not just for, me being a herbalist, but just period. Because I feel like we should always be open to learning. And not just from books and documentaries. We should be living and learning from life. And understand that we can learn from anyone. I learn from my children all the time. It's every day my son teaches me something new. I've known my husband for 15 years, and I still learn something new about him damn near every day. So always be open to continuously learning and evolving and enlightenment in your life. Because that's going to keep you open to greater and better things, even when you have your setbacks. And it makes life fun. All right. Create your own path. Create your own path. Again, who said it had to be one way? Who said it only had to be one way? If there isn't a road for you, create your own. Embrace the imperfections. Now, this was a hard one for me a long time ago. Because I never considered myself perfect. And I never really wanted to be perfect. But I also didn't embrace my imperfections. And once I did, I was able to live authentically and be myself. And I know you can too. It doesn't matter. Nobody is perfect. Nobody's hair is perfect. Nobody's looks are perfect. There are going to be screw-ups that I make in this podcast. This podcast will not be perfect because I'm not a perfect being. But I am a being. I'm human. I have flaws. Everyone does. Nobody's perfect. But once we start to embrace our imperfections and we embrace them to the point where it's like, oh, this is like, oh, like anybody can say something to you and it wouldn't even matter because it's something that you embrace. There's nothing anyone can tell me about me that's going to hurt me. Because I embrace it all. I embrace my looks. I embrace my weight. I embrace it all. That is my superpower. And you can use your imperfections as yours too. I don't like to call them imperfections, because at the end of the day, all of the little quirky things, or the things that we nitpick at and we don't like about ourselves, those things are what make us us. Those are the things that make us beautiful and unique. And those are the things that we should love about ourselves. And when we do, when we fully embrace those things, we show up to the world beautiful as ourselves. Practice self-compassion. Don't be so hard on yourself. You're not always going to get it right the first time. Things are not always easy. Because in pain and in struggle and in setbacks, there is growth. There are lessons that need to be learned. And the Most High would not give you anything that you cannot handle. Most High will continue to cover you, but you have to know that. You have to know that life is just a beautiful journey. And within that journey, we're going to experience it all. So don't be so hard on yourself. Speak good into yourself. Speak positive words and affirmations into yourself. Even on the bad days, even on the setbacks, even when you don't feel as if you can show up 100% yourself, or show up 100% your authentic self. Have compassion for yourself. Have grace for yourself. And last but not least, have patience. It took me a whole year to get back in front of this camera to speak these words to you. I had to have patience. Patience for myself. And know and understand that everything falls into place when it needs to. So have patience for yourself. Because at the end, it will all pay off in you being your authentic self. So let's recap. Ways to break away from societal norms and embrace a more authentic path. Self-reflection, defining your own success, having courage and confidence in self, challenging any and all assumptions, embracing failure, being a continuous learner, creating your own path, embracing imperfections, practicing self-compassion for self, and last but not least, patience. Remember that the journey of breaking away from societal norms is a personal one. It is about finding your own path and living a life that feels authentic and fulfilling to you, regardless of any external expectations. It's a process of self-discovery, growth, and empowerment. And you have the power to do all of those things. Well, my loves, that has been it for this episode of Rooted in Muddy Waters with Tomikaya Latoya. I will that you were able to take something from this podcast episode, and that you use these tips to continue to live as free and as authentic as you possibly can as yourself, because you are loved and you are appreciated, and the right people that are for you will always be for you. Okay? All right. Again, this has been Rooted in Muddy Waters with Tomikaya Latoya. Until next time, peace.